Hello and welcome back to AMR Unplugged, a podcast that has been brought to you by React Africa, specifically for the purpose of raising awareness on antimicrobial resistance. My name is Musonda Lamba Milapo, and I'm your host. Today, I have a very, very special guest. I'm so honored to be sitting next to him. He needs very little introduction, a very well-known name when it comes to antimicrobial resistance. He also serves as my boss. He is the co-founder and executive director of React Africa, Professor Mirfin Mpundu. Prof, welcome.
Thank you so much.
I have a quick question for you as we start. Many people know you, but perhaps people may also wonder, if you were not doing AMR, what job do you think you would be doing instead? If you're not doing what you're doing today, what other job do you think you would be doing?
Yeah, I think I would be working in a clinical setting. I would be uh, working in a clinical setting as a clinical pharmacist, and that would be what I would be doing.
You'd be sitting behind doing the dispensing.
And working on in the wards,
Mhm.
working on specialized units. Since I did specialize in infectious diseases, I'd be working um, um, in the units like the medical wards,
Mm.
the ICU, and that's where I would I would be spending most of my time.
It's a bit hard to imagine. We're so used to seeing you on the global stage, representing Africa's interests, even as we address antimicrobial resistance.
Yeah,
And the topic for today, I think it's a big one to unpack.
yeah,
Um, a lot has been said about AMR financing. The world has literally been flipped upside down in the past, should I say, 2 years. 2024 and 2025 have seen a huge change in global financing, and we already know that AMR, for all intents and purposes, already has little funding allocated to it, especially here in low and middle income countries in Zambia and Africa at large.
yeah.
So that's what we want to talk about today. That this huge topic of AMR financing, and I think just to kick off the conversation, I would just want to hear from you in terms of um, you have interacted with so many people and so many organizations at both local, national, and at international level. How do you think organizations, especially those that are working on AMR, have managed to survive despite this,
Mm,
this huge setback?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This is an important question, and it's a bit of a difficult question to try to answer in terms of how organizations are surviving that have been working in the AMR sector. But for us to be able to get the appreciation of that, I think it's important to put things into context. At the start of the year, we had almost an economic volcano erupt when the US closed USAID. What had happened is that the US was the largest funder in terms of global health and international aid. And with the closing of the USAID, what was earmarked for 2025, $60 billion was actually halted. And part of this money was going towards supporting health interventions that included antimicrobial resistance, emergency preparedness. It included mother and child and neonatal health. And of course, at that point, when they did that, HIV and AIDS was actually threatened, and tuberculosis funding. When you look at the African region, they uh, the estimated figures that we look at to implement antimicrobial resistance interventions, we're looking at between 2 billion to 6 billion a year in terms of what we need to invest. And with the suspension of of the the aid from the US, we have seen that some European countries equally have reduced aid.
That's right.
And their reasoning has been that some of those funds have been moved um, um, to address security concerns. So the entire global finance infrastructure has been really disturbed. And one needs to understand that when one looks at the self-evaluation of countries in terms of the National Action Plan implementation that was done by WHO in 2024, out of the 177 countries the, that self-reported into what is called the track system, um, there was actually 11% of those countries have not provided funding for their national action plans. And so, we're looking at about 19 to 20 countries only have that. And most low and middle income countries, including Zambia, they don't have budgets, they don't have funding for national action plan activity implementation. So what we are looking at here, Msonda, is that there is a huge gap, because as a continent you need $2 to $6 billion. You have the major country that has been supporting global health suspend its funding. You have countries in Europe that includes France, Germany, Norway. All these countries are cutting aid towards health programs. Then, of course, this has left a huge void in terms of implementation of interventions that can go towards the containment and the arrest of the rapid spread of antimicrobial resistance.
Wow. From the rich data that you have just explained to us, I'm now thinking back to the question: are organizations even coping? How can they?
So organizations are really strained.
Yeah.
The ones that for one of the one of the good things about the USAID funding was that it allowed organizations like civil society organizations, the faith-based organizations to be able to access some of those funds and implement them into their activities, activities that focused on raising awareness on antimicrobial resistance, activities that included investing in infection prevention and control, activities that invested in surveillance, activities that invested in promotion of optimal or rational use of the current antibiotics. And so these organizations benefited by accessing some of those funds, and those taps have been closed.
Yeah.
So they can't access that. The only organizations, so most of these organizations are shut down. They've literally closed. Some of the organizations that are surviving are organizations that are receiving some funding from Europe, and those are few organizations because we have also, like I've said, we've also seen the reduction and the cutting among the European countries towards supporting low and middle income countries, and especially supporting civil society organizations and and other organizations that are invested in the area of antimicrobial resistance.
Yeah. Truly, the strain is quite evident. I do agree with you on so many levels. But looking inwardly, especially, you've just explained about the in a way that organizations were heavily leaning on these taps that have been closed now. What lessons do you think can be learned by, I won't, put it out there to say organizations, but looking internally as people who are working on antimicrobial resistance, what lessons can we learn from this huge strain and this huge lapse, that we have experienced, and especially looking from the perspective of the future for us to become more resilient? What lessons can be drawn from this?
There are a couple of lessons that can be learned. One of the very clear lessons for countries is that we should operate like there's no money that is coming from the northern countries. We should work seeing and believing on the assumption that the era of foreign aid is coming to an end. And what that means is that we have to find ways of mobilizing domestic resources.
That's right.
And so, our countries have to find innovative ways to mobilize local resources that would go towards the support of the implementation of the national agendas that address antimicrobial resistance. And for organizations, local organizations, it's also similar. We have to think outside of the box. We have to try and and mobilize resources from local organizations that are within a country, organizations that are working in the areas of finance, the areas of agriculture, in engineering, and in other sectors, making the case of why they should invest in antimicrobial resistance interventions, because that's the only way that we'll be able to actually survive. And some of the local organizations that have got a little bit of money, they can start investing into ventures that would generate income, and that income that can go towards towards putting into implementation of activities towards antimicrobial resistance. Yeah, so the key really is really focusing on domestic financing, and for national governments, it is quite critical that the activities that are in the national action plans are actually budgeted for in the national budgets.
That's right.
So the governments need to start investing into AMR interventions by accommodating them and apportioning and assigning budgets to them, because that's the only way that these activities are going to take place.
Truly, I love the internalization and the real focus on domestic funding, because that's truly the way to go. I love how you also brought out that we need to look away from the expectation of the international aid and look within ourselves to find the solutions and the money, really, to answer the problems that we have.
Yeah.
So just looking ahead, even as we approach 2026, what key opportunities and even threats for AMR would you say you foresee from a bird's eye perspective? Yeah.
Yeah. Just another point on the previous question. I think our countries have to be quite smart enough in integrating, integrating funding activities into, for example, into application towards the pandemic fund, towards some of the loans that they get from the World Bank, including some of those activities in these loans, I think would be quite critical. And if there's any formation of of any trying to take advantage of the regional banks and the regional institutions like the Africa Development Bank, those those can be taken advantage of
Mm.
by building and incorporating AMR activities into those applications for those grants and those loans. Coming to the question of the forecast, it is quite concerning when one looks at the way that the turbulent year 2024 has been, and because we have been dependent
Yeah.
on foreign aid for most of our activities, and that foreign aid, the taps are closing. The whole ecosystem of foreign aid has actually changed. I see that countries will struggle with the competing priorities. Already, the country budgets are strained.
That's right.
Already, we have seen that most countries, their health budgets over the last 10 to 15 years have been on a decline. And it's we have to ask very tough questions. If this decline continues, the consequences of compromised failure to fund health systems, failure to fund programs or problems like antimicrobial resistance are going to have very dire consequences. Already we have many lives that are dying from antimicrobial resistance, associated illnesses or infections. And if we don't address that in a very pragmatic way as countries, the trend will continue. So it's a wake-up call that our national governments can actually wake up and consider this to be a very serious issue and try and invest in it. Without that, the future looks very dire, and the future looks very, very concerning.
Yeah.
So the only optimistic way is when countries change the way that they look at this issue, and the way that they realize that it does need funding, and that funding will not come from somewhere, but it will come from domestic resources.
Yeah. I think it's a perfect segue to my very last question to you, actually, because you have talked already about the funding landscape and in terms of how we should look forward, that we need to not expect international aid and look within ourselves for domestic funding. And that's the only way that we are going to find the silver lining in the, should I say, the gloom of basically what what we are facing. So my my question when I think about domestic funding, and like you've already put it, that one of the things that you foresee is that the countries already have competing, other priorities, other competing agendas. I'm thinking more on the realism, of domestic funding. Is it realistic in our context, especially here in Africa, that countries will be able to rely more on domestic funding to address antimicrobial resistance, therefore the sustainability of AMR programs, and also as you answer that question, maybe you can speak more also on what would it take to, if yes, it's possible, if it's realistic, what would it take to make it more sustainable? Is it realistic and is it sustainable?
One of the ways in which one of the ways that countries need to consider through issues around taxes. I think, for example, sin tax can be used as long as what is realized out of such a tax goes straight to where it is supposed to be used. And in this case, we're talking about really investing in antimicrobial resistance, both in the human sector, in the animal sector, and the environmental sector. one can look at examples of where the environmental tax has been introduced. Some of these ways of raising some tax revenue. This revenue can go towards investing in interventions for antimicrobial resistance. One can look at, for example, taxes that would go towards pollution from the pharmaceutical industry into wastewater systems, or the hospital effluents and all that. uh, you could you could make an argument that really taxation is one of the ways in which some of these resources can be mobilized. Other ways would include really promoting the government promoting the public private partnerships,
That's right.
and
Yeah.
getting these countries, making a case to them, and promoting these sort of associations where these companies can be able to contribute some of their profits into these interventions
Mm.
that are good, that are a social public good. So these could be some of the ways that at country level, that governments can actually take advantage of, because addressing antimicrobial resistance would require, beyond government government funding and government involvement. It would take a private sector to actually be involved in this. And so that's one of the ways that I think I see that can be addressed.
Mm. I really like the the response, especially to involve the private sector.
Yeah.
I don't know how much they are being involved at this, where we are now, but it goes back also to all the fundamentals that we have been, I have learned even about addressing antimicrobial resistance through engaging multi stakeholders, really. And so I think that's a very good response, and a very innovative one, in the sense that we need to consider the private sector as we look forward. And would you have any last words, really, even as we close off the episode, in regards to the whole discussion that we have had on AMR financing? Anything that you feel that is key, especially for our listeners who will be tuning in, listening to this conversation?
Yeah. I think understanding that antimicrobial resistance is actually real.
Mm.
There are people there are real people that are dying today because of antimicrobial
Mm.
resistance. And we know the drivers of antimicrobial resistance, that include the overuse, the misuse of antibiotics, especially the easy access, buying over the counter, the use of antibiotics as growth promoters in animals that we are consuming. The part of the travel that occurs, the pollution
Mm.
from the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, wastewater management that is poor from hospitals. The low rates of immunizations from infectious diseases. These are some of the factors that actually drive antimicrobial resistance. And so if we need to really invest and focus on addressing, especially the overuse and the misuse. We need public campaign. We need public involvement and education that discourages people from misusing and accessing these precious molecules. We need good farming practices that where biosecurity is actually strengthened. We need to to improve the infrastructures, not just in hospitals for infection prevention and control, but water sanitation and hygiene in communities. And so investing in communities by strengthening and ensuring that there's clean water and supply, these are some of the key areas. And optimization in vaccinations, these are some of the interventions that will actually contribute a lot to containing antimicrobial resistance. And if because this is a problem that is affecting lives today, it caused, when one looks at the data for 2019, for example, we had more people that died from infections or infectious diseases that are associated with AMR than we had from people dying from HIV and AIDS and malaria combined.
Yeah.
So this is a real problem where lives are being lost.
Yeah.
And we have to do something now. And that call falls on government, it falls on individuals, that we all have a part to play in this containment. And so, working together, we can be able to reverse, we can be able to reduce the levels of antimicrobial resistance that we are seeing.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Prof, for sitting down with us today. Thank you so much for all the insights that you have been able to provide. I know the topic is a big one. It's a mammoth, and it cannot be exhausted in 30 seconds or 30 minutes. It needs much more time. But I definitely feel that you have done justice to just giving us the insights to where we stand with AMR financing. It is, though, our last episode for the year, this one. And really, it's an honor that you are closing us out for this year's episodes of AMR Unplugged. And so, just a quick seasonal greetings to to our viewers, and also as we are moving into 2026, what are we to look forward to from React Africa, but also just in general? What should we look out for in 2026?
From React Africa, we will continue supporting the countries with their implementation of their national action plans to address antimicrobial resistance. We'll continue working with health institutions to strengthen their programs in hospitals, like for antimicrobial stewardship, strengthening infection prevention and control and surveillance, and really continue to advocate for equitable access to both antibiotics and diagnostics. And with that, we just want to wish the viewers and say compliments of the season, wishing you a wonderful and fruitful 2026. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. This has been AMR Unplugged. Thank you so much for watching till the end. I hope that you were able to get one or two things on this huge and very, very important topic on AMR financing, especially for us in the low and middle income countries, Africa. And so don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on our social media pages, and look forward to what we have for you in 2026. Thank you.